Hi there class, Mr. Long here, and welcome to our first video lecture from me. And we are actually going to discuss our last major topic for Unit 1, and it's a really important one, but it's the idea of diffusion. And I want you guys to please think about this question because it's an important one. But why are different places similar? So why are different places around the world the same? Okay, so keep that in mind when we're going through this lesson and think about it, and hopefully we'll be able to answer that question once we get done. So the term diffusion, this was a vocab word, so you guys have seen it before, but it's the process by which a characteristic spreads across space from one place to another over time. Now, there are two major types of diffusion. We have relocation diffusion and we have expansion diffusion. Now, just think of the word relocate. If you are relocating, that means you are leaving wherever you're from and you are going to a different place. Expansion diffusion, I want you to think of that word, expand or expansion. That means it's getting bigger. It's spreading. Now, expansion diffusion has three separate branches of diffusion. First one being hierarchical diffusion, the second contagious diffusion, and finally the third stimulus diffusion. So you guys must know the two types of diffusion and then the three types of diffusion that branch out from expansion diffusion. So let's talk about each one of those. Before we get to that though, we really need to understand what an Hearth is. Now a Hearth, guys, we will talk about the entire year. It will come up the entire year. It's a very important vocab word that you guys need to know and you guys need to understand. So basic definition of a Hearth is a place which an innovation or cultural change or an idea originates. So what we are looking at right now on this slide, on this map, is the four major religions. Christianity, which is in gray, I guess that color's gray. Islam, which is in that like that pinkish red color. Hinduism, which is in the purple color. And then finally Buddhism, which is in the green color. Now if you guys are looking at the maps, the circles is the Hearth, where it started, where it originated from. Then the arrows is where it is spreading to. Okay, so religion is a perfect example of how an idea diffuses over space. At the end of this video, I have about a 2-minute video that talks about religions, and I'll play that for you guys so you have a better understanding. You guys can actually see the religion spread all around the world. So Hearth, once again, guys, is a place where an innovation or a cultural change or idea originates, where it starts. So relocation diffusion. We'll talk about the first one. So relocation diffusion is a spread of an idea through physical movement of people from one place to another. So people have to physically get up and move from wherever they're from and go to a different place, taking with them their culture, their language, their religion, all of their ideas. And in their new place, they will spread all of those brand new ideas to the new place. It's actually not brand new, but it's a new place. Examples of this would be language. Okay. Before the Americas was colonized, before the European explorers came over to the Americas, we had Native Americans that were living in North America. If it wasn't for the European explorers colonizing, setting up the 13 original colonies, English would have never been introduced to the Americas. And that also goes for Christianity. when the explorers came to the Americas, they also brought with them their religion. And some of them forced their religion onto the natives, the people that they encountered, these new people that they encountered. And that would be a very good example of relocation diffusion. Another good example would be the Black Plague. And a lot of people get this confused with contagious diffusion. We'll talk about that a little later in this lecture. But the Black Plague, guys, originated, they say, in Central Asia. And because of ships and because of trade and merchants, okay, the Black Plague was able to get to Europe. And once it got to Europe, then it spread very, very quickly. That would be an example of contagious because it spread so quickly. But because it came from Asia to Europe, that is an example of relocation diffusion. So I want you guys to be clear about that and not confused. Sometimes some of these diffusions will overlap. So a good example, give you guys a visual map, is the spread of Christianity to the Americas. Now, this map gives you an idea of where Christianity went. But like I mentioned before, if it wasn't for the European explorers coming to the Americas and bringing with them their religion of Christianity, there's a good chance that Christianity would have never spread throughout North America and South America. So moving on to expansion diffusion. And remember, guys, expansion diffusion has 3 different branches. So first, expansion. When you think of expansion or something expanding, it is getting bigger. Okay, there's more of it. So it's the spread of the feature from one place to another in an additive process, which means it's just spreading. There's getting more of it. So the first one is hierarchical diffusion, which is a spread of an idea from persons or nodes of authority or power to other persons or places. So guys, I want you to think of, when I say hierarchical, you should think of a pyramid. The most important person or people will be at the very top. And then as you go further down the pyramid, that person will get less and less important. A good example of hierarchical diffusion would be fashion trends, clothing. It seems like all the fashion trends start in the major cities of like Los Angeles, New York, Paris, Tokyo. And then from there, those big, big cities that I just mentioned before, then it diffuses to other cities, then other cities, then smaller cities, then smaller cities, then towns, and so on. So it works its way down that pyramid. So that would be a really, really good example of hierarchical diffusion. When I think of hierarchical diffusion, I think of notable people, people that are of high importance or power. Now, celebrities don't necessarily, I guess we can say they have power because they're well known, but a good example of hierarchical diffusion would be like Kanye West. He came out with his Yeezy shoes that are made by Adidas, and all the celebrities promote this for him, and they wear those Yeezy shoes. And of course, when we see the celebrities wearing these shoes, us normal non-celebrity people want them. So that would be another good example. Another example that's on the screen that you guys can see the spread of English to India. Now, Great Britain went into India, and you guys will learn this in world history, but India was Great Britain's most prized possession, their most important colony. And India, we've seen on a map before, is humongous. And of course, when Great Britain colonized India, they are going to force India to adopt their customs, their cultures. One of them being religion, another one being their language. So not everyone in India is going to learn English. It's going to start off with the higher class of Indians, the people that have money. and then it's going to work its way down. So that would be another good example of hierarchical diffusion. Just to give you guys a visual, you'll see this quite a bit. But once again, hierarchical diffusion, the spread of an idea from persons or nodes of authority or power to other persons or places. Now, nodes, guys, is another term that you guys need to remember. A node is like the center. And then in the center, it will expand out. Okay? So moving on to our second type of expansion diffusion, which is contagious diffusion. Now, just the word contagious, we can get an idea of what this diffusion is and what it kind of looks like. Now, whenever I think of something that's contagious, I think of like a cold or someone being sick. And I know for a fact when one person gets a cold in my house, by the end of the week, all of us have colds because it spreads. And it spreads very quickly. That's exactly what contagious diffusion is. It's rapid, widespread diffusion of a characteristic throughout the population, regardless of social class, economic position, or power. So now it affects everyone. It doesn't matter if you're upper class or lower class, or if you're rich or poor. Contagious diffusion will affect everyone, regardless of their social class. A good example of this would be the daily use of the internet and social media. This is huge on social media. You can post an idea, and then within 5 minutes, it spreads like wildfire, and it's all over the internet. So that would be a really good example of contagious diffusion, is the spread of an idea over like social media, because it spreads so quickly. Christianity spread throughout Europe. This is another good example. So you guys may not know this, but after the Roman Empire made Christianity their official religion, everyone was supposed to be a Christian. And people converted to Christianity. They were kind of forced to. And once that happened, not only through not only through the Roman Empire, but all of Europe. And then once the explorers went to the Americas, okay, and they took with them their ideas and their religion, that would no longer be contagious. That would be relocation. I mentioned that before. So this is why I don't want you guys to get confused. And then I mentioned the bubonic plague before. And I mentioned to you how that's relocation because it started in Asia, and then merchants on ships brought it to Europe. But now once it gets to Europe, it spreads all throughout Europe. And it kills off almost 1/3 of the total European population in the 14th century. So that is how it's considered to be a contagious diffusion, because it is so widespread and it is so fast. So like I mentioned, I will use the same examples, guys, for the different diffusions, but you have to understand how we are using them, okay? So once again, another visual, we have the contagious diffusion. The idea, whatever we're talking about, starts in the middle and then it just diffuses and it spreads very, very rapidly. Finally, our last type of expansion diffusion is stimulus diffusion. And stimulus diffusion is a spread of an underlying principle even though a characteristic itself apparently fails to diffuse. Okay, so the easiest way to explain this is that an idea, whatever the idea is, okay, it diffuses, it spreads. But whatever or wherever it spreads to, it's not going, wherever it spreads to, it's not going to pick up the entire idea. It may take a piece of that idea and then it's going to spread even more, okay? Now this one is probably the most confusing one and the toughest one to understand. But a couple examples. A good one is like our Apple devices, like our iPhone, our iPads. Apple was really the first to start this trend of smartphones, of tablets. And then of course we're going to have different companies that are competing with Apple For example, Samsung. Samsung came out with a phone that is very comparable to the iPhone. Samsung also came out with a tablet that is very comparable to the iPad. So it's very, very important that you guys understand what stimulus diffusion is. Another one that I like to use as an example is McDonald's. McDonald's, guys, is present in 6 continents spread throughout the world. I read an article the other day. McDonald's feeds 42 million people on a daily basis. But depending on what country you go to, the menu will look a lot different. For example, here in the United States, you go to any McDonald's, you order an Egg McMuffin. Okay? You have your egg, you have your ham, you have your cheese, and it's on the English muffin. Well, when I was in Paris about 6-7 years ago, I went to order Egg McMuffin, and I did not get an Egg McMuffin. I got an egg, a piece of ham, on a croissant. Croissants, obviously, are known in France or Paris, so that would be a good example of how they take the main idea of the Egg McMuffin, but then they change it up depending on what country they're in. Another example would be McDonald's in India. Now, guys, if you don't know this, Hindus, which is the prominent religion in India, they don't eat beef. They view the cow as being sacred. So if you go to India to a McDonald's, you're not going to order a Big Mac with beef. You're going to order a Big Mac and it's going to have lamb instead of beef. So that is another good example of stimulus diffusion. Hopefully we kind of understand what it is and the differences between the other ones. Just to give you an idea, once again, stimulus diffusion, you take the main idea and then you kind of tweak it, and you take what you like and then you diffuse that idea. So they're not taking the entire idea or concept or whatever we're looking at. They're just going to take a part of it. So finally, what I want to do is I want to show you guys this video which shows you guys the spread of the 5 major world religions, and it'll give us an idea of diffusion. Okay, so here we go. So you guys notice Hinduism spreads all throughout India. Now you're going to have the spread of Islam, which starts in Mecca, and this would be an example of contagious diffusion. It spreads all throughout the Middle East and Northern Africa. Then up top you have Christianity that's spreading. I mentioned before when the Roman Empire made Christianity its official religion. It spreads all throughout Europe. You guys notice Islam continues to spread. Now, the Age of Discovery, also known as the Age of Exploration, that's when European explorers, they relocate and they move from Europe to the Americas, taking with them Christianity. And then, of course, when you have explorers, European explorers that move into Africa and colonize all of Africa. Okay, guys, that concludes our first video lecture from me. Hopefully, we understand what diffusion is and the different types of diffusion. Please go back to these notes if you need to and review anything. Okay?